MapleStory is a 2-decade-old MMORPG that has amassed hundreds of millions of players. Last month, MapleStory N launched as a blockchain-infused version of the game in what many believe is the biggest crypto game launch of all time. Today, we speak to one of the creators of the game about why the launch was such a success, how they're fighting back against hackers, and what's next for MapleStory N. Keith Kim, Head of Strategy at Nexpace, lovely to have you here. How are you?
Hey, thank you, Ryan. Amazing to be here, interviewing with you guys. Decrypt. I've recently read, a number of articles that you have written. Very, very excited to be here and share more about MapleStory Universe.
Awesome. Yeah, so Nexpace, for those who don't know, the creators of the MapleStory Universe, which, I mean, MapleStory as an IP is now like a decade old, and it's got a cult following. It's quite an impressive following, if I'm honest. I guess really broad first question to start out here is, why do you think it's important for established IPs to come into crypto? Why is it important for the industry?
Right. MapleStory is actually 23 years old this year.
Oh,
So,
2 decades.
pretty crazy, right? I'm 32. I grew up playing this MapleStory since I was in the primary school. So, it's an IP that I've played my entire life. And, since then, a lot of people have been, more people have been joining MapleStory, and the whole IP is growing its presence. And to your question, why is it important for a big existing IP to come into the crypto? I think it's not really about blockchain, right? So it's when we are looking at gaming industry in general, making a successful game is a very, very challenging job, right? Even in Web 2, I mean, we're fully owned subsidiary of Nexon, which has over 50 live games on service, and we have over 1,000 people dedicated to creating new IPs, and a lot of those attempts, they get huge investments, they have huge people working on it, but when we are looking at how many percent of them actually hitting the market really well and sustain over a long time, it's not that much. It's, to be honest, it's less than 20%. That means creating a successful game, regardless of whether it's on blockchain or whether it's on Web 2, it's difficult. It's very, very difficult. And people are playing not a lot of game. Like not many people play like dozens of game, or like play different games every single month. Usually, that network effect where if you're used to playing, for example, League of Legends, you stuck with it for years, decades. MapleStory for decades. So these network effects makes creating new successful IP even more challenging over time. And I think that's how it is in blockchain gaming as well. So far, over the last 3-4 years, we have seen and studied many new games, new IPs being created or brought from Web 2 to the Web 3, and they were not hugely successful or sustainable. I think basically it failed to be an entertaining game for the most part, and also many of them were not really designed with sustainability as their core principle to achieve or achievement as a goal, right? A lot of game were like basically a gamification of, for example, DeFi concepts, which might not be sustainable. The builders, some of them builders, they didn't build it for their products to be sustainable to begin with. Not a lot of customers or users expected sustainability from their games either. So I think that was one of the major reasons why a lot of games that we've seen were not sustainable or successful in a long run. Of course, MapleStory has been sustainable for the last 23 years in Web 2, has been growing very, very well, but it's just been 34 days since launch. We haven't really, had the test of the time, completed on us. We are just beginning. But so far, we are seeing great numbers. We're seeing great adoptions from the Web 2 users. So far, when you look at our marketplace, basically there's huge traction in there. About over 10 million. I think it's closing $11 million in total transaction for the last 30 days. Over 900,000 users, active users in the platform. I think we're seeing huge tractions, and I think also on Avalanche, where we're using borrowing a lot of their text from. They are also seeing over 500% of growth in their transactions and activities on chain. I think we're doing a great start, and I think for a big part of that, it really comes from whether are we providing a sustainable fun and entertainment value to the users, something that users a lot of them they come to actually earn something out of our games. That's true, but is it worth paying? For your entertainment. I think that's another big part, and that's only available through very handful of successful games that's proven in Web 2.
Yeah, so just maybe to summarize your point, and correct me if I'm wrong, you said, launching a game is hard, and I would argue it's maybe even harder in crypto. One, because you sort of like narrow off some audiences. There's a lot of gamers that hate the idea of crypto being in gaming. Others love it. So, I mean, we'll get onto it later, but there's been so many crypto games failing as of recent, that closing, and it's been horrible to see. Are you saying that by taking an established IP with an established player base, it sort of reduces the chances a little bit? Obviously, you still have to produce a good game and a sustainable economy, but there's less, I don't know, friction to succeeding. You have a player base there, you have an IP that is established and loved.
Absolutely. And on top of that, um, if you create a product that is not meant to be sustainable, if you are not, as a creator, caring about sustainability, or some products that you want to run for over a decade, none of your customers will act in a way that will make that happen, right? So I mean, our game definitely has brought over lots of Web 2 gamers who have played MapleStory before to Web 3. So there was, I think, fair bit of adoption there that, kind of helped us to achieve these good performance over the last month. But also, because we have created, these level designs, these play mechanics that kind of provides entertainment. So, for those users who have been playing these Web3 games before in the Web3 space, but, maybe were, spending a lot of efforts to exploit every juice out of the game, they cannot do it, or they want to actually, hey, I want to actually spend some money in this game, this is fun. So a lot, quite a bit of behavioral or perceptual changes in the existing Web3 gamers as well. I think that's what a successful IP means in Web3.
Yeah, absolutely. Last month, MapleStory N released. It's the first installment into a sort of broader MapleStory universe. MapleStory N is an MMORPG that sort of looks and feels like MapleStory. I guess what is next for the universe? There are going to be more games, experiences, NFT collections. What is MapleStory Universe?
Back in 2022, when our Nexen Korea CEO Daehyun was releasing some videos of our visions, that was like the first vision of MapleStory Universe that we're building. Actually, we have ended up spending 4 years building this product. We didn't really saw it coming, but we clearly stated that we're building a universe. MapleStory Universe. So what is it? So when we look at MapleStory N, the PC MMORPG of MapleStory, I think the biggest area of potential improvement is that it is now on PC, and it's an MMORPG. I think that's one of the weaknesses, I would say, in a way that back 20 years ago when I was in primary school, I had tons of time to sit in front of PC, grind for hours, learn all the boss patterns, and spend a lot of my energy into the game. But we have kind of grown up, right? And I don't think there's a lot of teenagers who are playing MapleStory these days. So and we don't really have that luxury to sit in front of the PC. I mean, as general, I mean, that's the reason why over a decade ago we saw a lot of games being onboarded to the mobiles, to sort of mitigate these weaknesses that exist in the conventional PC-based game. And I think that kind of works a similar way for MapleStory N2, and that's like what we envision as the universe. So basically, there's the core fun pillars that exist in the PC MMORPG. So the PC MMORPG MapleStory N will still be the very core root of the fun, but it's just too much hurdles. So how do we extract that, core funds out of these core games and make it available on mobile, make it available on the go, on the web? So you don't really have to sit in front of PC or download like 20 gigabytes plus clients to do it. How do we make it a little lighter, a little bit more, further away from the core product itself, but you still enjoy the fun? I think something we have seen before in Nansen's endeavor was two tracks. First, in Web 2 MapleStory, we have the PC MapleStory. We have made the mobile version of MapleStory, but they're kind of different worlds, right? We have totally built from scratch, how we could imagine MapleStory being playable in mobile state. So, I mean, these are doing fantastic. That's one way. Another track is how we have worked with EA, Electronic Arts, to build, FC Online, previously called FIFA Online. So in FIFA Online, there's the core product where, it's basically the soccer match, right? You have your team, you actually control each of your character to score the goal, you lose or win within a matter of minutes. That's the core fun. But, a lot of people are spending a lot more time, money, and effort in the meta, the periphery of the core game, where you're forming your team, you're trading your character, you're looking at the character marketplace, you're enhancing your character, and everything can be done on mobile. And a lot more people, just like MapleStory, they have less and less time, less luxury to sit in front of PC to master your mechanics of controlling your characters, right? So they're spending much more time in that universe layer, that meta play layer, to grow your team. That's like the core fun of the game, right? And once you're kind of satisfied with your team that you have grown through the meta play, the universe layer, then once in a while, perhaps during the weekend, you play the core game one or two times. But this making of this core fun extracted outside of the PC client and, make it a bit lighter, but it's still connected to the core part, has allowed this IP to grow very, very big. And I think we're taking a similar approach. This is what Nexon and, Nexpace has been doing for many years. So we're extracting the core fun part of MapleStory N, like, for example, creating your character, growing your character, like leveling up, getting the experience points, doing the quest, doing the boss, acquiring of the items on the way, acquiring of Nesso, the utility token on the way, being able to spend these tokens to enhance your items, trade. So all these core components are now confined to the PC. We're extracting these out to the mobile and web environment, so you can have a more relaxed relationship with the core game, but you're still getting the core fun. And once in a while, when you're happy with your character's growth and everything, then you will come, like, for example, during the weekends when you have more time, then your weekdays, you can actually come into the MapleStory N and still enjoy all the bossing and everything that you wish to do. So that's, I think, the first version 1 of our universe in the roadmap. And I don't think we'll be able to achieve all these big meta play and universe layer by ourselves. So that's the reason why we have been actively recruiting some of the developers and builders who can participate in the building of this universe.
It's really interesting that you bring it back to EAFC. I mean, I play EAFC myself, and you're right. It's like you have the core game, obviously, that playing a football game on it, but then you have the trading and the. It's like the pack grind. You like put your players into these squads, send them off, and then you get a pack, and then you open it. You probably get nothing because your pack lock's rubbish. But then you open it a few times, and you're going to get something good. I guess my question then is, like, how many of these experiences are there going to be? Because with FIFA, for example, it is just one mobile app that you can download, or you can do it on a web browser. Are you planning on multiple web apps, multiple web browser experiences? How much are we going to have here?
So I think those, details is to be confirmed. But
Mhm.
as I shared with you earlier, we're not building this by ourselves. I don't think we can build A to Z by ourselves and live up with the expected speed of delivery of this universe. And I think because there will be a lot of different parties that will be joining in building of this universe, there might be multiple, mobile application. There could be multiple web apps, but we're trying to have like a curated page where all these developments, whether they are made by us or built by a third party builders, they can be seen, they can be exposed. Users can choose what to play, what to engage, and so on. So there will be, I think, multiple layers of applications, whether mobile or web, but they will be curated in a way.
Is there an application that is close to being finished, or is this all sort of in the early phases of...
As Nexpace is building a product where we're pulling out the item enhancement out of the client. Right now, it's only inside the client that you can enhance your items, which is a very, very core part of growing your overall strength in MapleStory. We're bringing that to web. I think this should be ready for the release either late July or early August. I think max. And after that, we're also talking to different teams and also internally about building like rental systems and also like mission systems where uh, you see your characters in your phone, but you don't really have the time to play. But in order for your characters to like grow and acquire experience points, it has to be played by someone. So we are creating like a marketplace of missions where like my character is level 200, someone go make it 201 by actually playing the game on behalf of me. I will pay you how much. So basically, these kind of meta play, universe layer, we're should be released towards the Q1 of next year. That's our current goal right now. I cannot promise that these are, I think, still at the high level stage of discussions, but our aim is to roll out these complete version of meta universe layer early in the next year.
Do you have an idea of how many of these experiences that you're planning on getting rolled out, or is it's still sort of you've got maybe 3 ideas and you're planning more?
So actually, we have already received like over dozens of ideas from the builders. We have received hundreds of emails from the builders just over, I think, last 15 days. We're kind of curating them. We're kind of discussing what kind of seems like likely to make it, or I think what are redundant, what are what overlaps. So I think there will be easily over a dozen of these products to be rolled out Q1 next year. Yeah, so I think it's gonna be a lot. It's definitely not gonna be like 3 or 4. I think there's gonna be much more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so with these builders, they're sort of like players that have played the game and realised like, oh, this is an app that I would like to have. When you then decide to go ahead with their idea, are you then sort of going to be contracting them to build the application?
Yeah, so we have like different phases of how we want to engage with these builders. So right now, you need the API key, then you contact us, then we'll be, talking to the builders, like, what kind of applications that you want to build, what is the expected usage numbers, like, API calls. And then we issue the API key for their development. And, when they want to go live, then we have the contracts individually. But I think these individual reviews or, contract could be eventually a bottleneck to how fast we can expand. So in the future phases where we can kind of automate, these application process through developer, community or developer center, which I think should be out towards Q3, Q4 this year. We can kind of make it permissionless, and eventually, we are centered around contributions, right? We have 80% of our tokens tied to the contribution economy. Right now, sadly, we have to admit that we are the only contributors, and we hope to see this, contributors number go up and receive the share of that weekly emission of NXPC. We also are working with, different teams, different projects to how we can fairly assess the weekly contribution points to, divide these weekly emissions by, right? We are also on the way to, automate this. And when we have that ready, I think, fully permissionless with these builders onboarding should be possible. But, might not be possible this year as, I think fairly assessing the contributions between, for example, games. If you're building a forum, if you're building a a website where you can search the items that you need, I think it's very, very diverse kind of categories and use cases. Automating this in a fair and confident way might take some time, but we're kind of doing one by one, step by step towards there.
Yeah, it's super exciting. And I mean, at the center of it is obviously MapleStory N, which is sort of like your flagship product here, and everything's sort of centered around that. That's the sun of the universe here. Tell me a bit about your launch, because from the outside looking in, it was a roaring success. Like I was speaking to gamers the day you guys launched, and one gamer said that he thinks it's the biggest crypto game launch ever. I mean, Off the Grid is the only other one that I could see as comparable, and sort of the argument there is that Off the Grid maybe had more of like a mainstream attention on it, with like Ninja playing the game on launch and stuff, but it didn't have a sort of crypto ecosystem from day one, whereas you guys did. I guess, do you think it was the biggest crypto game launch ever? And what did it look like from the inside?
I think so. I think it was, at least for last 3-4 years. I mean, before, post XE season, I think our NXPC launch was the biggest launch ever for the gaming token. Day one Upbit, day one Binance, and Bybit, all these huge players supporting us in the spot was I think a huge success on our side. Especially, I was working with the I was leading the all these listing aspects of the work before the TGE. It was a hell of a journey, lots of progress made over a few hours before the actual launching date, and I cannot disclose all these nitty-gritty details, but there was a lot of roller coaster rides, and I think looking back, it was pretty crazy. And internally, our team was super, super excited as well. I think about a week before the launch, not many of our teams getting proper sleep. Maybe barely getting 2-3 hours of sleep, and even the day zero when we went live, it was pretty hectic. So we're pretty happy with the result. We I think had a lot of positive comments and perceptions of our projects as well. I think a lot of excited communities in different places of the world, in China, in Korea, in the Americas, in the Europe. I think it's very positive. I think now we are listed in over 80 plus CEXs with 80 plus different pairs, 10 plus dexes. Now for last month we had about $11 billion trading volume of NXPC, about $370 million daily transactions on across different CEXs and DXs. So I think so far, so good.
Yeah, definitely. It was a massive launch. Obviously, I knew about MapleStory, but how successful the launch was, but did surprise me, if I'm honest. It was like, oh wow, okay, these guys are really taking it seriously. And yeah, just speaking to people playing the game and like experts in the industry, everyone sort of like stood up and paid attention, kind of thing. But since then, I've been seeing online a lot of people have been complaining about sort of exploiters and hackers in the game, and you guys have recently put out a statement about this. Hacking in gaming is one thing, but hacking in a crypto game is another thing, because of it's a little bit hard to just roll back the blockchain to take away their items. What are you doing in that circumstance that someone's hacked their way into getting rare items?
It was a huge issue internally. All our teams were on emergency alerts, so we're actually spending 110% of our efforts into making sure that these hackers and botters are not able to exploit the game. And I think not being able to exploit the game in a macro sense is one thing. Even if they are not exploiting lots of resources out of the game, being able, being spotted by the users, like these botters and hackers everywhere, like existing in the game, they're visible. That visibility part is another thing, and whether they are actually taking away in a micro level all the rewards that's supposed to be given to the real players, that was another thing. So we're approaching this in a different angles, and also how we prevent it is quite different in a way that the number of attacks that we have been receiving for MapleStory Universe is many folds bigger than like entire Nexon's game ecosystem combined. So
Yeah.
we have never seen such a magnitude of effect. I mean,
Yeah.
I think because I think there's much to be earned by doing so. I think there's huge, I mean, unimagined, unprecedented amounts of attacks that we have
But why do you
experienced.
think that is? Is that the size of the game, or is it the crypto element, do you think?
I think it's both, and especially if you can earn an XPC by playing the game, and if you can kind of speed up or automate in like big scale macros, that really poses a lucrative market for these hackers, right? So I think that's one of the biggest reason, and I think another reason, I think this is what I've stated in my Twitter post, a few days ago, is that there is virtually zero cost. For example, in Web 2, for example, like, where Nexon's from, Korea, if you want to create your, game account, you have to do your verification. You have to, every Korean has the ID number, that unique ID number that you're not supposed to disclose or share with other people. You have to authenticate with that number. You have to authenticate with your mobile phone and all that, right? And if you are a abuser, if you're running a team of abuser, like for example, you want to do it at a big scale, you have to obtain these personal information from the black market, which incurs you the cost. And if you fail, that cost is your damage, right? But here, everything is, free, virtually. Create another wallet if you automate it in MetaMask, that's virtually free. And, when we're looking at it, why don't you impose that damage to those abusers, right? I mean, that's a obvious questions, but that kind of restricts a lot of, just gamers, right? Non-abusing gamers, to enter these Web3. And, given that there's quite a lot of populations that are playing, Web3 games for the first time because it's MapleStory, these hurdles and restrictions, could be quite detrimental for the entry. So we are trying to find a right hurdle, which if you are a user, and you have to kind of cash out within like 30 hours, which is the average, ban time that is taken from you creating a MetaMask. And, then we don't know if you're actually an abuser or not, all the way till you can extract, a very small part of assets from MapleStory within that 30 hours that you have to immediately leave, right? If you're under the circumstance, there might be a hurdle that might work against you. But if you're a normal user who are here to play for like months or years, shouldn't really be a hurdle, right? So we're trying to experiment with different things here.
Yeah. So, but when you find these hackers, I assume you sort of ban their accounts so they can't play. But in terms of like the on-chain elements, what can you restrict? What can't you restrict?
Of course, we have been restricting the bridge out part. So like, all of our tokens are traded. Most of our tokens are traded in Avalanche C chain. So if these damage could be confined within Genesis L1, where they cannot transfer, they cannot bridge it out, the damage is more or less, contained there. And actually, we can eventually, bring those back into the item pool where the normal gamers can, earn from, right?
How do you bring that back?
So we do have
their
a
account?
callback function,
Okay.
that are actually meant to be used in case of emergencies, like when we have massive hacks on bridge, so we can freeze them. These are audited. These are controlled by different layers of multisig. These are very, very hard to trigger. But when we, for example, see a volume of macro assets that are tied or frozen within Genesis L1, after a while we can do some housekeeping and bring these value back to the gamers. I think that's an option that we have.
So that is like you would wait until there's like a large amount, say for example, there's a particular item and hackers have taken 70% of the item, completely slashing the supply, and regular gamers can't get their hands on it because it's extortionate price now because it's at 30% supply. Then you would sort of speak internally and then take that back. And would it be an internal thing, or would you like go to your community and ask?
I'll definitely check with my community if this is something that they want. But, so far we haven't done it because, what's funny is, these macros, we're tracking their, worker nodes, their banker nodes, their different levels of banker nodes, right? And overall, when we're looking at the macro level, their earning is way less than their earning is way less than their spending. So these macros, they actually bought NXPC because they want to, get into certain levels, certain level of items, so they can be efficient in, being very quick within the 30 hours and, exploit the game. But so far, their net inflow is way bigger than, I think, twice bigger than net outflow. So we don't really have a lot of, damages there. I think so far, I think it's tolerable level. But what is not tolerable in the experience of playing the game myself, right, is when I'm on the field, when I want to grind, a lot of the fields were actually occupied. Now I think it's a bit better, but when we're looking even just a week ago, a lot of the field across all the channels, they were occupied by the botters and abusers, and that was the primary thing that we wanted to get rid of. I have all these stats in front of me. Most of the botters and abusers, hackers, they don't get beyond level 120. Maybe very small fraction, like 3-4%, go beyond level 130, 120 levels. A lot of them, they get caught and they are banned around level 100, which is relatively the earlier phase of MapleStory. So, not a lot of resources are there to be farmed to begin with, so they don't really have a lot of exploits possible. Eventually, they will evolve as our preventative measures will evolve. So it's an unending battles between, okay, we set a hurdle, they get over it, we make it higher, they get over it. So I think right now we are seeing, I think, at least 80 to 90% less botters and hackers in the fields, in the game, since our patch few days ago. So I think it's a huge improvement. We're also hearing some news back from our users, reports from the users, that they're starting to see smaller scales of these botters here and there. But we are also already working with how we can prevent them from playing. But it's gonna be an endless battle.
Yeah, of course, it's an endless battle in any game. But I think it's a particularly interesting issue with crypto gaming, because of the NFTs and the ability to earn and all of this that's involved in it. And yeah, I'm so interested. It's one of the things I'm most interested in when it comes to crypto gaming, for sure. Speaking of crypto gaming more broadly, what do you think the industry needs to reach the next levels of adoption? We sort of mentioned how an established IP can help create a successful game, as we're seeing here. But what pushes crypto gaming to the next level?
That's a very interesting question. A lot of things that is currently preventing more users to come. For example, regulations. Our games are geo restricting the access based on their on users' IP for a lot of countries, including Korea, which I feel is one of the biggest market of MapleStory right now, even in Web 2. I think that's something we are working on. We're also expecting these regulations to be more favorable in coming years, and also all these Web3 artifacts that exist. Like, for example, I don't think I have to explain the details. Like your MetaMask. MetaMask has been doing so well, improving these experiences, but still, Web 2 users, if we were to bring it to that Web 2 level kind of experience, that kind of low hurdle, we have long way to go. I know a lot of teams are trying to abstract away all these difficult and confusing artifacts and experiences away for the Web 2 users, but it's not really picking up a lot of attractions right now. So I think it has to be, it's not one or two aspects that needs to change. I think there's huge, dozens of aspects that needs to be upgraded and be bettered for this next level adoptions to come.
Yeah, absolutely. What are your current thoughts on, we sort of touched on it earlier in this interview, about there's been this wave. It's really weird. It felt like there was like maybe a month or 2 weeks where like a dozen crypto games closed. It was really weird. I mean, you had Dead Drop, Ember Sword, Nyan Heroes, Metalcore, The Walking Dead Empires. There was more than that. It was crazy. Why do you think that we've seen that sort of weird trend swipe the industry?
I hope it's not because of MapleStory, but but jokes aside, it's I think when we are looking at back in the time like 3-4 years ago, when you had your random blockchain game with tokens and NFTs, it was so
Mhm.
much easier for you to get fundings from different VCs, also get tractions from the users, because people were not too well versed, and the industry, the investors were not too well versed in the overall aspects like sustainability, the revenue, all these things. Back then, it was like, hey, take my money. I'm pretty sure it's going to 10x, 100x. So it
Yeah.
was much more favorable and easier. But over
Mhm.
time, I think in the general sentiment of this gaming sector in blockchain is very, very low. It's
Mhm.
people are not expecting something huge because they have been disappointed so many times, right? So I think it will be rightfully, because of the history, more difficult to receive funding, more difficult to do marketing, more difficult to attract users. I think it's just the course of it's running down its natural course there. So I think that's really kind of brings back the importance of existing giant Web2 games, that it's actually providing entertainment to their gamers, and gamers are paying a lot of money for that entertainment. To really use blockchain as a great tool to unleash these closed economy into a much
Mhm.
wider, free tradable economy. So I think that's the way forward, and I think the existing games are struggling a lot because basically making a great game is so tough.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it does come down to that. And you mentioned even in Web2 gaming, 20% of games succeed, and I would guess that it's even lower in crypto gaming, especially with sort of the hype that comes along with these games, because they sell NFTs and tokens before the game's even out. So you have this huge community of people expecting the price to go up when they've not even got a game. Yeah, it's rough. It's sad to see, but I think maybe necessary. Hopefully, we start seeing more games sort of establishing themselves in the industry. You guys, hopefully, one of them. Wrapping up here, it's my last question. We've sort of spoken more broadly about the Maple Story universe, but for MapleStory N, what is next?
I think my game director will be so pissed off at me if I reveal too much here. But I think lots of people are expecting new classes, Arcane Reaver, the fifth job advancements, like the Signet's Knight, the Resistance, and all these new job classes, and actions and items, new bosses. you know, uh, I didn't expect I will use this word after TGE, but it's coming soon. Before TGE, a lot of people are asking when TGE, when game. I always said very soon, but all these expected things, they are in our roadmap. They are coming soon. Right now, this very week, and perhaps over to the next week, we'll be spending a lot of our efforts into making sure that MapleStory N is not easy to exploit by the abusers and
Mm,
hackers. I think that's our number one priority at the moment. I think we're
yep.
seeing a great success. Hopefully, moving on, we'll be rolling out these contents in coming month towards the end of the year. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Yes, but all these expected contents, they're coming very soon.
Awesome. Keith, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Ryan.